Okay, you guys, so today we are going to talk about lab techniques. Before we start discussing lab techniques, I want to sort of get you in the headspace of what we're looking for, what we're trying to teach you when we're talking about things like separations and later on identifications. Um, Before I start lecture, I just want to quickly ask a question, and that is like, well, let's do a scenario actually. Let's pretend that we're all anthropologists. And if you're an anthropologist, and let's say you're specifically in looking at old seed remains, right? Um, so let's say you're looking at old seed remains, and you get a bunch of stuff from the dirt, right? And it's all these seed remains, um, and it's not too long ago, so they're not charred. It's a long time ago; they're all charred. Let's say they're pretty new, right? So it's not old stuff. We're just looking at what culture now today might like what people might like have in their garbage today, for example. Um, and we have a lot of seeds, and we specifically want the corn, right? Versus, I don't know, acorns versus grass, right? How would we separate those things? How would we figure out which one we wanted or get the one we wanted? We could do it by size, right? The corn is going to have a different size and shape, but a different size than the acorn, than the grass, right? Than those different seeds. So this is one way we do that also in organic chemistry, and we'll talk about that later. Another thing that we can do. What happens though? But what happens if we have a bunch of different corn, right? So we could have blue corn. We've seen that. We have red corn. We have yellow corn. So the Zea is different. The Zea mays is different in one characteristic, right? And that is color. So in this case, you identify by another characteristic, by the color, right? Or you separate based on color, and you could pick out whichever color you wanted, right? You could pick out all of the yellow corn versus the red corn versus the blue corn. So that's the other way you can do separation. So they're different, just like we can do that in anthropology, and specifically in this case, it might be archaeology. Maybe not. It's more size, actually. Yeah, actually, within parenchyma seed remains, the charred seed remains, you can still do it by size. If it's corn versus grass, it's all charred, it's all burnt, but you use a sieve and you actually do separate it out. And it's really tedious. You separate it out. These particular separations that we're going to go over, this is the same sort of thing. So we're looking at a characteristic, right? We're looking at a characteristic of something, of a compound. In the case of the corn, is a characteristic of a seed, right? But in the case of a compound, it's something that's characteristic by the compound that we can then use in order to separate that compound out from another compound, right? And so that is what we will do, or we'll talk about now when we talk about separation, specifically in chromatography. We have a lot of chromatography to go over, and that's one of the new changes to the MCAT 2015. They do a lot more in chromatography than they used to. It used to be just pretty much TLC on a test, but now they have other things they want you to cover. So let's go ahead and look at that and apply that, what we just talked about, to this. So just like we could use the size for the corn, right? We can do size exclusion, is what it's called, for chromatography. So let's talk about chromatography. So chromatography has different parts of it, different phases, right? And within chromatography, you have two phases, always. You have your mobile phase, and then you have your stationary phase. Okay, all right. So your mobile phase is just that. It is where things are moving, right? So within your mobile phase, whether it's a liquid or a gas, doesn't matter, but within your mobile phase, your compounds or components are getting R. Excuse me. I can't write. Excuse me. So they're sort of going with that, right? They're going with whatever the the solvent is, right? So they might be dissolved in something, or they might, well, yeah, they'll still be part of a gas, and they're going through with that mobile, that thing that is moving through whatever your stationary phase is, right? So the stationary phase is just what it says, it's not moving, right? And it has some sort of thing, right, that attracts the compounds or compounds that you're looking for, hopefully, in your mobile phase. So this is still. Oops. Am I so attractive? I cannot write tonight. What is going on with me here? These are beads. And they're porous. So you have these porous beads, and the beads, because they have pores, small things can get to through the pores, large things can't, right? So the objective here, porous, right? The objective here is to then pour a mobile phase which contains compounds of different sizes. If you take a bunch of compounds that are same size and just charge differently, that won't matter because these are not charged beads. And so it doesn't matter that they have pores. Everything's the same size and everything will just go through. However, if you take a mixture of different sized compounds, right? Faster elution rate. Well, the one that's going to travel through faster is a larger one. In the end, since this is coming through faster, then you know, okay, well, we have these come faster. This is what this compound is going to be because it's larger. We get that first, the second, third, whatever compound, or the next compound that's smaller comes through slower, and then you separate the two out based on size. Or they separate themselves out actually because they're poured through based on size. So that's the first type, the size exclusion chromatography. And so what is the take home here? The take home is that just as you can in real life, right, like we said before, just like you can in real life separate things, whether they be based on their characteristics, different colored or different sized nuts, right, or seeds, based on our example here with the corn, you take the characteristics, you think about what characteristics something has and what is going to be the best way to get what I want at the end, right? So in ion exchange, obviously we're thinking about the charge on things, right? In affinity, you're thinking about the ligand, right? Remember we were talking about that previously in this lecture. And then you're thinking about what types of compounds have those characteristics. So are we talking about proteins, right? Remember we were talking about separating different proteins based on ligands, right? Based on affinity, rather, not based on ligands. Or using ligands, using different ligands to separate them. And so that's what the take-home is that you have to think about in organic chemistry, in the MCAT world, you have to think about the differences in what, if they ask you a question, they're going to ask you a question based on those types of characteristics, not just what is, size exclusion, TSL flash, whatever, chromatography. Instead, they're going to give you different separations, and they're probably going to throw in some identification methods, and then they're going to say, what would you use in order to separate this alcohol from, I don't know, from this base? Let's just say that, right? What would you use to separate two proteins, right? Whether or not one protein is protic or aprotic, or one protein is whether one protein is basic versus one is acidic, one is polar, one is non-polar, right? Again, you're thinking about the characteristics of the thing that you want and what is going to be the best technique to get that in the end.